Hi there and welcome to another PSD Tuts spoon-fed Photoshop tutorial. I'm Gavin Steele and I'm going to be taking you through this designing a rocket-powered retrofuturistic digital illustration. Unfortunately I haven't got the author's name at the minute, but it will be posted on the website, so be sure to check that out. Let's have a look at the final image that we're going to be creating. Okay, it's this image down here, Explore, and it's a really great image. There's a cool little rocket in the top up here. We've got Sputnik down at the bottom and this brilliant little font across the middle, a nice text effect. And obviously we've got the nebulous in the background, and we're going to play around with colours and things like that. So let's have a look at some of the files that are on the tutorial. There's this rocket here, there's the Airstream font, there's a nebulous, and there's Sputnik. Now for this tutorial I've used the images of Sputnik, but I've replaced the image of the rocket with this picture here because I think it gives a pretty cool overall image and it saved me having to buy it, and there are a lot of free images that you can use around to create exactly the same effect. I haven't used this nebulous either because I bought one from my stock photo a few weeks ago for a previous tutorial, so I'm going to use that one, and that's basically it. So I'll just give you a quick look at the image that I ended up with. Okay, so there's our Explore, nice colours, here's my nebulous in the background, we've got my rocket, a little bit out of shape there but we'll fix that, and of course we've got Sputnik down here as well. So that's the kind of the end image that we're going to be aiming for, and to do that we need to use Illustrator and Photoshop. So we're going to start off by using Illustrator. I'm just going to close that down and load up Illustrator. Once you've loaded up Illustrator, head over to your text tool. We're going to type in a nice large text. I've set it to 600 points. I've already set my font to Airstream, so make sure you select that, and we're going to do one letter. We're going to do E. Then I'm going to click on the black arrow in the top left hand side of the toolbar, and then with that selection tool we're just going to move our E into sight a bit to the left. Brilliant. Once you've done that, we're going to apply an effect to it. We're going to apply a 3D, extrude and bevel. A quick tip here is make sure you check preview. It's not set to preview as default, so make sure you check that, otherwise you're going to make some changes and you're not going to see what's happening on your actual document. So we need to set these to 0. We're going to set the y-axis to -20, and then we're going to set the z-axis to 26. We're going to leave perspective at 0. We're going to increase our extrude depth to 154. We're going to change our bevel from none to this complex 3. Okay, and then we're going to come down to our plastic shading. If you can't see this area down here, make sure you've got more options selected, and then we're going to choose a custom color, and we're going to choose a nice light blue. So let's click on that color swatch, and we're going to choose a nice blue like that, which happens to be 00E7FF. Click on OK, and then click on OK, and there's our E. So we're going to Command C that, we're going to copy that, head over to Photoshop and load up your picture of your nebulous. This is the one that I've got here. Just going to zoom out so you can have a better look at that. There we go. Okay, it's the one that I used for the digital SLR tutorial the other week. So if you followed that one and use the same files, or you found one similar, you can definitely use that. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back in. Right, once we've got our nebulous on there, we're going to apply a gradient overlay to it. So I went to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and I went down to Gradient Map. Once you've clicked on that, you'll get this little screen here, and I've already preset my gradient map, so I'm going to go in there and show you exactly what colours I've used. I've used this pink colour here, which is AB6984. Just off centre I've used 253039, a dark blue colour, and the last colour is black, 000000. Make sure you've got reverse set, so it should be going black to pink. Click on OK, and I'm just going to make sure you can see that, and you can see that it makes a nice change. Okay, it makes the stars look nice and pink, and the clouds start to look a darky blue, kind of foggy kind of colour. You'll also notice on the right hand side I've got all my letters already done, but I'm going to take us through the letter E, and then we're going to come back to the other letters in a second. So, in order to do this E, the first thing we need to do is paste it in, and we're going to paste it in as a smart object. So I just press Command V there to paste. Make sure you've got smart object selected, click on OK. It's going to take a couple seconds and load that in. Okay, once we've got that E, first thing we need to do is resize it, but I'm just going to not do that. I'm just going to hit enter and we're going to start playing around with that even. With our E selected on that layer, we're going to use the Magic Wand tool and have it set to a tolerance of about 18, 15, something like that, and click on your letter E. We're trying to get this area here. We're going to refine that selection, so we're going to head up to Select and then Modify and Contract. I'm going to contract it by 5 pixels. If that's too little, I'll go back and do more. If it's too much, then I'll go back and undo that. So I'm going to click on OK, and that actually looks pretty good. I've got a nice little border going on the side, and that's what we're looking for here. So once you've done that, create a new layer above it, and we're going to fill that selection with white. Double click on the layer. We're going to go down to Bevel and Emboss in our layer style, and we need to make sure we've got the following settings. It should be on Inner Bevel, Smooth, Depth should be set to 100, Direction should be up, the size we're going to reduce it down to 1, Soften is set to 0, our angle is set to -49, we're going to use the global light, 32 degrees. We're going to set this to Screen White. We're going to reduce that opacity down to 14. We're going to set our shadow mode to normal. We're going to reduce it. Well, actually, we'll leave that on 75. And then we're going to play around with the colour. Okay, so the colour should be a nice mauve colour. So I'm just going to select one. I've got over here 5A293F and click on OK. And then click on OK. Once we've applied that bevel to that layer, the next thing we need to do is I'm just going to Command D to deselect that. The next thing that we need to do once we've done that, I'm just going to show you what that looks like if I just zoom in just a little bit. Okay, it's added that mauve kind of edge to it, but as with everything, it hasn't done it perfectly. So the reason it hasn't is because my selection needs to come in a little bit more. So I've just gone back a few steps there, pressing Command Alt Z, and I'm going to go back to Selection, Modify and Contract, and I'm going to contract it by another 5. Click on OK. Okay, that looks a bit better. I'm going to get a thicker edge there. So if I go back to Selection, Modify, Contract, actually let's expand it. I'm going to set that to 2. Okay, that's much better. Then on that new layer, again I'm going to go back to Fill, I'm going to go back to our Bevel and Emboss, and just make sure I set all of those back to the settings we had before. Set that to normal, and we're going to choose this dark red kind of colour here, which is 5A293F. Click on OK. Okay, and that looks pretty good. Let's Command D that now. Let's zoom in and see if it looks a bit better. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then let's zoom out. Okay, so once we've done that, the next thing we need to do is apply our gradient map and our background nebulous to that layer. So to do that, we're just going to copy them. We're going to click on that layer, hold down Command or Control on a PC, and just drag that down here onto the new layer symbol, and then drag it above those two layers. Then holding down Alt and clicking between the layer, we're going to apply them as a clipping mask. So again, you hold down Alt, click between the layers, and it's only going to apply these two things to this layer here. And you can see what that does is it shines through or it makes it look like we're looking through our letter. Now, once you've done that, what we need to do is we're going to change the image layer opacity down to 50%. So click on your image layer and just reduce that right down to 50%, like so. And now it just looks like we're looking through our letter. Okay, once you've done that, we're going to move on to the next step. We're going to go back into Illustrator. So click on Illustrator, and we're going to go back into our 3D extrude and bevel. Now to do that, you need to double click on this little window here in this little tab. Don't go back to Effect, 3D and extrude and bevel, because it will start to apply another one. Just double click on the one that we created earlier, and we're going to make a really simple change. So let's load that up, and we're just going to turn caps off. Once you've done that, we're going to click on OK. Give it a couple of seconds to apply the effect. There it is. Command C one more time. We're going to copy that. We're going to go back into Photoshop, Command V as a smart object, and then we're going to position that so that it kind of looks like the inside of that lettering. Okay, so once you've got it on like so, just going to move that in like so. Holding down Shift, we're just going to scale it. Bring it up a bit. In fact, I don't need to scale it, I can just... Let's just paste that one more time. Okay, there we go. Let's move that up. And inside like so. Hit enter. And then what we're going to do is we're going to change the opacity down to about 40%. Okay, and let's apply that as a clipping mask, and then it's just showing the inside of our shape. It's a nice easy way to make that look 3D and like we're looking up through a bit of frosted glass or something like that, and we're looking into our shape. And once we've done that, we're going to apply another layer to the top of it. We're going to grab a big white brush, make sure it's nice and soft, so turn the hardest right down to 0. And then again, hold down Alt, click between the layers, so it's only going to apply it to this layer here. We're just going to start to click and apply a bit more frosting and a bit more light to the layer. So we're going to come over the top down here. Not too much there. Okay. Okay, that looks pretty good. Next thing we need to do is add some shadow. So what we're going to do is I'm going to make a selection of the full letter, which is down here. So hold down Command or Control and click on that layer there. And then we're going to use a big black brush. Okay, and we're going to add a little bit of shadow. Okay, so make sure we've got that selected. You create a new layer, and we're just going to darken this area behind, so it looks like it's in the shadows. Okay, and then deselect. Okay, that looks pretty good. Next thing we need to do is do all of the above, so all of these stages. For each letter, so this would be E, and you can see I've had a few attempts at doing my E's like so. So once you've got all your letters in place, I'm just going to reveal the other ones that I've been through and done. They've all followed exactly the same process. Okay. You've got to start playing around with the order of them. So you can see that it doesn't quite, even though it spells explore, some of these go behind, some of them go in front, depending on where they are on our layers panel. And you can also have a look at the X as well. If we have a look at our X layers, okay, it's all exactly the same. We've added our layer, we've put the background nebulous and the gradient map on top, we've clipped them, we've used the white to lighten these areas, again with the clipping mask, and then we've darkened some of the bottom areas to make them look further away and look like they're in shadow. So that looks pretty good. Okay, the letters look a little bit like they're floating in space. Maybe they started off together and now they're just moving away from each other. So once you've done that for each letter, and it's a good idea to do each letter in a folder. Okay, it's going to take a bit of time to do them, but once you've done that, you can move on to the next part of the tutorial. Okay, the second part of the tutorial is all about the colours and the actual items that we're going to add, like the rocket and the Sputnik image. So the first thing you need to do is we're going to click on the very top of everything. We're going to click on Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and we're going to add a channel mixer. Okay, click on OK, and then inside the channel mixer, make sure you've got the output channel set to red, and then enter in the following settings. We're going to have it at plus 190 for red, green is going to be set to 0, blue is going to be set to 15, and the constant is going to be set to 0. Then we're going to head over here and we're going to select green, and we're going to select 0 for our red, 145 for our green, 0 for our blue, and then 0 for our constant. Going to click on OK. Now from now on, we need to make sure, and you can see what a great little effect that's it's had on that text. It's really dated, it looks really retro, and you can see it's that alone, that one layer is going to start to pull everything together inside the design. Now there's no real black anymore, there's no real white, it's all been affected by that channel mixer, and that really adds to it. So you need to be careful now whenever selecting colours that you turn off our channel layer to start with, so you get a good idea of the colour, and then turn it back on and you can see what it's going to look like inside the design. So what we're going to do is we're going to create the little trail of our rocket going from right to left. Okay, now to do that I'm going to use my Wacom tablet. I've only got a cheap bamboo Wacom tablet as I hit the mic with it. Okay, and we're just going to draw out the trails from the rocket. Now to do that we're going to make sure that in our brushes palette, make sure that you turn on the pen pressure. Okay, so make sure you've got your pen pressure turned on and just have a play around with it. I'm not brilliant at using it, and again I've only got the bamboo tablet, so it's only a starter, and just play around with creating a new layer. In fact, let's just undo what I just did there. Create a new layer and then choose a colour just to play around with. Let's choose one off of here. So I'm going to choose one of these blues, grab the pen tool and just play, pressing lightly. You can see it draws these harsh lines. Whereas if we hold it down and then press out, it you can see it with the pressure, it kind of fades out. Now the reason it does that is because A, because of the pressure, but B, I've turned my hardness right down. Okay, if I just start by holding it and pressing it down really firmly, it's going to make a spot like that. So I want my rocket to go from just over the A here in this space here, and as if it's come from down here. So I'm just going to have a quick practice, quick play around, like so. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to, using I, I'm going to select some of the colours that we've got here. In fact, let's enter in a nice violet colour. So enter in a violet colour which is 66445 B, and I want that to, on a new layer, I'm just going to add a bit more colour. So I'm going to have that coming down like so. And again, just practice. I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to add white. Okay, and maybe a lighter blue. So I'm just going to move these around. Create a new layer. Let's choose like so. Okay, that looks pretty good. And let's bring some of these a bit further down. Ooh. Okay, and let's have a look how that looks. So we go back to our channel mixer, we're going to turn that on and we're just going to bring it above everything else and see what effect that has on it. Now inside each of those layers, so if we go into our red layer, I'm going to grab my eraser tool, make sure it's set to 0% hardness, reduce it down, and I can just start to just erase out some of the areas like so, just playing around until I get something that I'm happy with, to try and make it look like this is where the rockets come from. Okay, you can see my opacity is set down to 30%, so I don't really, mess anything up too much. Go to this white layer. Like so. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So once you've done that, and you can obviously do it with the mouse as well, but if you buy a cheap Wacom tablet and just play around with that, you're going to get some really nice effects. I'm just going to take off some of the bottom bit down here so it's less harsh. Okay, so that's pretty good. Once you've done that, you can always make sure that you go up to your channel mixer, turn it off, choose your colours again from the palette that you're choosing from down here, and then start drawing with them. Okay, if I was to just grab a colour and then put it on the layer above that, it's not gonna look as good or tie into the overall style of the design. So it's a really good way of ensuring that that actually does that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in our rocket. And when we bring in our rocket, we're going to position it, and then on some layers underneath it, we're going to play around with some sparks or something like that as if it's coming from it. So here's my rocket image. Okay, I'm just going to zoom out. I'll bring that right onto the window, like so. And I just used a pen tool. I've quickly gone around the outside edge. I'm going to copy that image, come back into our layer, click on new layer. In fact, I can just Control V it and I'll stick it right in there for me. I didn't need to do that, but once you've done that, I'm going to Command T to scale it. I'm going to come up to the top bit up here. I'm going to maintain my aspect ratio and then reduce it to about, let's say 10%, something like that. Apply the transformation and then let's bring it over. Again, I'm just going to flip it around like so. Just angle it, try and get the angle right. Okay. Now, I think that looks pretty good, but it looks a little bit too big, so hold down Shift. I'm just going to bring that right down. And we could put it like so, but I want it to look like it's just coming out like that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now we're going to go back underneath and create another new layer. And then, like I said, on that layer, I'm going to turn off our channel mixer. I'm going to grab some white, grab a brush, I'm going to reduce the size of my brush right down, Let's just zoom into that area there. Okay, and with that brush I'm just going to create a couple of scraggly fireworks using my Wacom, like so. So you can just see them, they're really faint. Okay, just coming down like so. And again, just going to scroll down to the left. There we go. And again, just have them coming down. Like so. Let's just zoom out a little bit and have a look at how that looks. Okay, that looks pretty good. Again, you can add in some colours in there. Make it black, sorry, not black, make some red or something like that. Next thing we need to do is we need to change the colour on our actual rocket itself. So I'm going to go and create a layer, new adjustment layer. We're going to come down, and inside here we're going to go to selective colour, which is right there. Okay, click on OK. And then we're just going to change our magenta to 100. Change our yellow down to -63, and black we're going to set to 100. Okay, once you've got that, let's have a look at that. Change our colours, put our channel mixer back on, and that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. It can definitely ties into the colours that we've used in our explore text. Ties in, it looks like those flames are coming from the rocket itself, and the fade from where it's originally come from looks pretty good as well. Now, in the actual original tutorial, there's another rocket trail coming across the top here. I'm going to leave that out for now. It's done in exactly the same way, but just to speed through the tutorial, I'm going to move on to our Sputnik image. Now, load up the Sputnik image. I should have it. Okay, so here's the Sputnik image that I got from iStock. Just turn that off for a second, turn that off, and here's the original image that I've got. Now, all I did was I played around with the desaturation, brightness and contrast, and selected the dark area which looked like this, and then went back to my other layer, copied, and then pasted onto this layer at the top. And it's a really complicated way of doing it, or uncomplicated way, quite a raw way actually, but I end up with the image exactly how I want it. I put this pink background on just so I made sure I selected all the right bits, and then just Command C to copy that and come back to our document, Command V, and paste it in place. Gonna Command T to free transform, gonna flip that vertically, and we're after this image down at the bottom. So I'm just going to scale that down just a little bit. Okay, and then I'm just going to add a quick mask to that and just mask out the other one. We don't want them to look like they're coming right next to each other, and just bring that up. Let's get rid of that, like so. So I've just filled that mask in with black so that we can't see the other Sputnik, and now we need to position our Sputnik to get it right. So I'm just going to move him just down the bottom so it's like floating in this area here. I'm going to free transform it one more time and just rotate it up, move that back down, and hit enter. Okay, it looks pretty good in that place there. So we're going to zoom in and we're going to add a little bit of red to these areas down here. So let's bring that up a little bit. Using the pen tool, I'm just going to select the area like so. Right click, make it into a selection with feather radius set to 0. Click on OK, and then we're going to fill that with a nice pink colour. So again, it can be that same 66, 44, 5B. You can fill it with that colour, or if we zoom out now, we've got it selected, and we can choose one of these pink colours up here so it's almost reflecting the text. Oh, let's make sure we're in the right area here. Nice pink colour. Okay, and then I'm just going to fill in that area with that. And let's zoom in. And as always, I didn't inverse my selection, and fill it in like so. Brilliant. Grab the pen tool one more time, and we're just going to do this area over here. Again, making a selection, inverse that selection, and then just fill it with that colour. And finally we're going to do the leg at the bottom. And again, just fill that in. Oh, no pixels were selected. Let's make sure they were. And finally fill that. Whoop. And again, selection, inverse, fill that. Command deselect. Let's zoom out and have a look. And again, that starts to tie in our Sputnik with our image. On that layer, we set that to color dodge. Oh no, what I should have done is we just go back really quickly. Okay, zoom in. I should have done each of those on a new layer, so I'm just going to quickly do that right now. Let's fill that with that colour. Grab our pen tool. Now it doesn't want to play ball, so I just want to speed through this. Okay. Let's go to selection, inverse, and fill, and then that last leg down here. Not sure why it's doing that. Inverse that selection and fill. Okay, right. Once you've done that, the next thing we need to do is we need to change that layer to color dodge. Okay, so the whole image isn't affected, it's just that layer. And what that does is it brings out some of the detail in that leg. We're also going to reduce it down to about 60%. Okay, and that starts to tie it all together really, really nicely. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate our lovely background layers one more time. So drag them down to new layer. We're going to bring them all the way up on top. We're going to stick them into a folder, and then we're going to make sure we hold down Alt. Okay, and apply that to that layer there. We're going to set the screen mode to, the layer mode to screen, and then we're going to bring the opacity right down to 70%, like so. And then we're going to change the gradient map so that it's only got the dark blue. So we're just going to take off the pink, click on OK, click on OK. And now we can see some of those stars starting to come out a little bit more through our design. Next thing that we need to do is we're going to add a texture layer. So I'm just going to close that group there, and there's a link to it on the website, and it looks something like this, and this is a free texture. And I'm just going to grab that and just bring it in to our document like so. I'm going to turn off my channel mask so we can have a look at it. We're going to play around with the curves, so Control M or Command M, and what we're going to do is we're going to bring it up something like this, and just really play around with the curve so we've got really high contrast like that. Click on OK. We're going to set its opacity down to 80%, and we're going to desaturate it. Image, adjustments, desaturate, and then what we're going to do is we need to increase the size of that. So I'm just going to Command T, start off by rotating it 90 degrees. I'm just going to scale it for now. Click Enter. Okay. Then need to set it to soft light. We can see, excuse me, when we turn back on our channel mixer, it's applied a really nice little texture to our font and to our background. Okay, that is pretty much the tutorial. So you should end up with an image that looks something like this. Just going to turn that layer off for now. Okay, and you can play around with the different layers and get different effects, but I think that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with my rocket and the explore text. It's a great tutorial, so be sure to check it out over at psdtuts.com. I've been Gavin Steele, taking you through this tutorial on creating a rocket-powered retrofuturistic digital illustration.